Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Sector 5. I'm your host as always, Katie the Hangman Heinzman. And, I know what you guys are probably thinking. Did he remember to plug in his headphones this time? The answer is yes. I remembered to plug it in this time. And 2, you may notice a striking difference from last time. It was getting a little too long, and with current circumstances, not being able to go to the hair salon, I decided to just shave it off. So that's the thing. But, onto the main topic of this video. Wrestlemania Part 2 just ended today. And I am going to do a rundown. And I got with Jeremy. You may remember him from past pay-per-view predictions and reviews to see how I should tackle this. I was debating doing a rundown of day 1 and then rundown of day 2, but he said to just do it the way I usually do, and I kind of agree with it. So that's what I'm going to do, and we'll talk about that a little bit more at the end of the video. So, let's go ahead and get started. First few things we need to talk about with the review. Both kickoff shows had matches that were not advertised. So day 1, we had Cesaro versus Drew Gulek. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Drew Gulek picked up the win on that one. Not 100% sure. I do not remember. We're starting off this review well. I forgot that I needed to look that up. So, there's that. I believe Drew Gulek won that match. We'll put a question mark next to that. Then, today, for part 2, they had the pre-show was Natalya versus Liv Morgan. And Liv Morgan picked up that match. I can remember that because that was today, not yesterday. So there's those 2 matches out of the way. So like I said, we're going to do it the same way I did all the other videos. Do the non-title matches first. Then we'll talk about title matches. So let's get started. We have Otis and Dolph Ziggler was the first match that I have wrote down here. And the winner of that match was actually Otis. I had Dolph Ziggler. I didn't do too well this year, I can already say that much. But Otis picked up the win. And walked off with Mandy Rose. That was interesting, to say the least. Next up, we had Aleister Black versus Bobby Lashley. And Aleister Black picked up the win. Hard-fought match. Little disappointed with the inclusion of Lana. Not gonna lie. That's basically the only reason Bobby Lashley lost was because of Lana. But I digress. Next up, I have wrote down Elias versus King Corbin, and Elias picked up the win on that one. And the match actually happened. There was speculation that it might not happen, and King Corbin was trying to say, hey, Elias isn't here, so I win. Then Elias showed up, and the match happened, and Elias picked up the win. Next up, I have Kevin Owens versus Seth Rollins. And the winner of that match, technically twice, was Kevin Owens. Reason I say for twice, the first victory Kevin Owens was awarded by disqualification. Seth Rollins hit Kevin Owens with the ring bell. And Kevin Owens said, this ain't going down like that. Restart this match, no disqualification. Match restarts. Kevin Owens picks up the win by pinfall this time. Next up, we have Edge versus Randy Orton in the Last Man Standing match, which I think was the match that most people really wanted to see. And the winner of that match was the Rated R Superstar Edge, and it was a brutal match. Edge showed off some interesting moves, to say the least. Being Mr. Spider-Man and walking on the steel, like something from a steel cage, over top of a table and delivering an elbow drop. That was interesting. I did fear towards the end of the match where the match ended, so that was interesting as well. So next up we have the interesting matches. And the reason I say the interesting matches is because they were kind of not matches. We had John Cena versus The Fiend in the Funhouse match, and it was an interesting experience, to say the least. Not really tell what in the world was going on with that. And kind of wish it was better executed. I'd say that. Because it pales in comparison to the next one. I guess we could say The Fiend picked up the win on the Funhouse match. John Cena was knocked unconscious and then disappeared. So I guess we give the win to The Fiend there. Then next up was Undertaker versus AJ Styles in the Boneyard match. And that was a beautiful cinematic experience. And I definitely would tell people to watch that match. This one could at least qualify as a match compared to the John Cena Fiend Funhouse match. Undertaker did bury AJ Styles alive, like I surmised they might make that the way the match ended. I wasn't 100% sure how that was going to go. And so, Undertaker picked up the win. All in all, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed that match. So, that's it for the non-title matches. Let's go into title matches. First one that I had down was the Kabuki Warriors versus Bliss and Nikki Cross. And it was actually the headliner for day one. Again, we're not going in order of the days, but this was the first match of day one. First match of day two was the NXT Women's Championship, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's what started the match off. I have it typed down here. Let me double check that. Yes, that was the first match, day two. But that is neither here nor there. We had the Kabuki Warriors versus Bliss and Nikki Cross for the Women's Tag Team Championship. And Bliss and Nikki Cross actually left with the title. I was actually kind of surprised by that. I guess I shouldn't be as surprised as I am, I guess. But, again, until things start picking up with the tag team division of women, I guess it's not that big of a title to me right now. So, Bliss and Cross are now, once again, Women's Tag Team Champions. So, we'll see how long they hold it for. Or if my prediction of them being transitional might be a thing. Next one I have down is the Street Profits versus Austin Theory and Angelo Garza. And Street Profits picked up the win on that one. I don't think anyone would be surprised with that outcome. Especially with the more information that I found out today is that, like, this tag team was put together not even a week ago. So those two people were just kind of, we need the Raw Tag Team titles to be defended. Here are these guys. Go at it. So, Street Profits picked up the win. Next up is supposed to be the SmackDown Tag Team Ladder Match. It did still happen, but Miz could not make it to the show, so they had to make it a triple threat match. So instead of a triple threat tag team, It just became triple threat. So one wrestler from the respective teams was in the match. Part of the representing the tag team champions was John Morrison. Representing the Usos was Jimmy Uso, and representing the New Day was Kofi Kingston. And the winner of that match was John Morrison. It did have an interesting outcome to it, where all three of the superstars were up there, and they all pulled it down once, and they all had their hands on it. And Kofi and Jimmy knocked down John Morrison, and Morrison kept the titles in his hand as he was going down. So Morrison retained them basically by luck, I guess you could say. Next up, I have Sami Zayn versus Daniel Bryan for the Intercontinental Championship, and Sami Zayn retained that. A little help from his buddies on the outside, but then again, Daniel Bryan wasn't by himself either, so I guess you can say it was as balanced as it could have been, but there was outside interference. Next up, as I said earlier, it was the headliner for day 2. We had Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte Flair for the NXT Women's Championship, and Charlotte Flair actually left with the NXT Women's Championship. Then we have, wrote down here, Becky Lynch versus Shayna Baszler for the Raw Women's Championship, and Becky Lynch retained it. Then I have down the Fatal 5-Way that I did not realize was an elimination style match until today. For the Smackdown Women's Championship, Bayley, Sasha Banks, Lacey Evans, Tamina, and Naomi. And if I would have known it was elimination going into the predictions, I probably wouldn't have put it towards Tamina, as Tamina was the first one gone. That would have probably been my prediction, that Tamina would have been the first one gone. This is not me trying to say, oh, if I knew better. It's just me that didn't know all the facts at the time. I think anytime you know it's an elimination style match, the biggest person in the match is going to be the first one gone. It's kind of a no-brainer at this point with most matches. But at the end of the night, Bayley did retain her title. With a little help from Sasha Banks. I kind of think we're going to see Bayley versus Sasha for that title, either at Money in the Bank or the next pay-per-view after that. Which we'll talk about Money in the Bank a little bit more as well. Then we had the main event for night 2. Brock Lesnar versus Drew McIntyre for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. And the winner of that match, and your new WWE World Heavyweight Champion, was Drew McIntyre. Both these World Championship matches weren't, I'm not going to say they weren't spectacular, but they weren't long. They both were hit, finisher, hit, finisher, hit, finisher. We're done here. So Drew McIntyre retained. And then Goldberg versus Braun Strowman. We had Braun Strowman walk out with the Universal Championship. And again, it was Goldberg hit 3 spears. And Braun Strowman hit 4 power slams, and that match was over. So compared to last year's with the world title matches being long and a hard-fought thing, this year was kind of get in there, get it done, go home. So that has been the WrestleMania rundown. And I said something at the beginning about talking about the days, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. And here we go. So I want to keep some kind of an archive of how this WrestleMania was. So down in the description below, I'm going to have the matches in the order that they happened on the day. So it'll be day 1, here's your order of matches. Day 2, here's your order of matches. So that's basically what I want to talk about with that. And then the second thing I really want to get into is something I wanted to talk about a little bit more in the last video, but I had to kind of end the video a little bit before I wanted to, and that is, I'm going to say people's thoughts about this WrestleMania, where people are like, they should have held it off. This didn't feel like WrestleMania to most people, I guess. And I can understand the feeling, I guess, behind it. And my thoughts more with it is, again, I'm kind of glad it kind of happened. They started off the show with Stephanie McMahon coming out and, saying, here, watch this. It's a distraction about things that's happening in the world. And it was nice to have that for a little while. Again, I do not wish any ill wishes towards any of the WWE superstars in that. I can understand if some of them did not want to with current things going on. But it was still a good show for the circumstances. If there's the only one gripe that I would have with it, is I kind of wish there would have been a little bit more, like maybe one more match on each show, because trying to advertise this as too big for one night, and this WrestleMania was not as long as last year. You had about 3 hours both nights, making it about a 6-hour show, and last year's was about 8 hours or so. So that's my one main gripe that I would give towards this. Maybe they should have fleshed out the Firefly match just a little bit more. Maybe add just a couple more segments to it, and maybe it would have been better. Again, it was kind of a squash to me, that Firefly, compared to the Boneyard. But I ain't gonna complain too much about things with the show. Current circumstances made things a little bit weird. This WrestleMania was different, but it's still WrestleMania. I feel that if we keep looking at it with the outside look of there was no crowd, no interaction, getting lost in that, it takes away from the thing. If you just look at it of, this is WrestleMania, let's enjoy it. So, again, I enjoyed watching WrestleMania. It is a bummer that it has fallen into the certain time that it has, and may have been missing something small from it, but at least it wasn't a complete flop. Sure, matches had to be rearranged and that, but it was still an enjoyable show. So with all that being said, I hope y'all enjoyed, and as always, I'm Cody the Hangman Huntsman, and that's just how it is.